After the buzzer, May 20th, Mike Gross and Gordie Jones with you. We're going to be talking about more of a variety of things because I sense that the audience out there thinks we're too NBA oriented.
Is that a bad thing?
I'm not sure it's a bad thing, but we're going to be somewhat NBA oriented, but we'll get to a lot of things. And first and foremost, we have a special guest online who is, we're going to say he's an expert on the Golden State Warriors because he's a Franklin and Marshall graduate. He's a Reading Only Name graduate, but for some time now he has been covering the Warriors as a reporter, writer, broadcaster, commentator, podcaster, etc. He is Matt Steinmetz. Welcome, my man.
Hey, thanks for having me. We can talk about the Centennial Conference if you want to get into it.
I love the Centennial.
I'm happy to do that.
We love the Centennial. I fear we would be inundated by phone calls if we did that, Matt. But we'll see. Well, who knows? Matt, one of the most interesting things that I've seen recently in sports is what I perceive to be the instant change in the Golden State Warriors the moment that Durant got hurt. Now, please tell me that I'm not overstating that and not imagining that.
No, you're not. It's obvious. It's obvious to people who've watched him for as long as I have, and it's obvious to people who've just watched him since Kevin Durant's been there. There's just no doubt about it. I mean, Kevin Durant, I think, is probably the best scorer in the game, and he has to have the ball at times.
Yep.
And just because that's his number one skill. So I think toward the end of the season, he was getting a little bored because he went through a stretch actually where half of his last 14 games of the regular season, he took 10 or fewer shots. So that tells me he's kind of messing around a little bit. The thing is, we've seen the Warriors play differently. They share the ball more, it moves more, but there are still times I maintain that they're going to need Kevin Durant if they want to win a title this year. But no, you are absolutely right. It's completely different.
I thought Steph Curry was he was kind of a mess. And maybe it was the finger injury, but he was missing layups. He seemed like his confidence was shaken, and it's real easy to overread these kind of things. But then instantly when Durant got hurt, it was almost like, okay, I got to get out of my own way right now and just do it. Did that part surprise you at all? Tell us a little bit about Steph as a competitor and what his psyche is.
Well, I think to the degree he kind of turned it on, then I'm pretty surprised at the degree to which he turned it on. But the one thing I was thinking about is if you're Steph Curry and you're taking the floor with the Golden State Warriors, whether it's a game in January or whether it's the second game of a first round series. I mean, the fact is you walk onto the floor with Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and Kevin Durant. I mean, it really is close to an all-star team.
Yeah.
And if you've ever watched an all-star game, before it can get sloppy, what it really is a bunch of guys overly deferring to other guys. Mm-hmm. And so I think, that's one thing that Steph Curry's done in Kevin Durant's 3-year tenure, or certainly he's taken less of a role just because they don't have to be as perfect. I mean, they just it's like they're playing pickup basketball and they're better than everybody, and so if they see an opponent that they know they can beat, I mean, what's the sense of urgency there? It's hard to create a sense of urgency for these guys right now, individually or as a team. But they have it when Durant's not there because they know they're not invincible.
That's interesting.
Your comment about Durant kind of getting a little bored at the end of the regular season, the first thing I thought of is your guy Larry Bird. Remember that one time when he decided he was going to take every shot left-handed in a game, just to entertain himself?
Yeah, I do remember that. And I remember saying at the time, Gordie, doing that I don't think it comes from a bad place.
No.
But when Kevin Durant was doing that, there were actually fans out here, and even Durant tried to kind of suggest that no, nothing's changed. They're just not coming. You know, I'm playing within the offense. You know, it's nothing crazy that I'm getting 8, 9, 10 assists a game. And they really tried to downplay it, especially KD. And at the end of the year, I was saying, you know, look, I get it. He doesn't want to take 25 shots a game for whatever reason, but is this good? Like, is this good looking 6 weeks from today?
Right.
I mean, is it really good to have the best scorer in the league take 25 shots one game, take 9 the next, take 22, take 7? And that's what he was doing. And I didn't necessarily think it was what he was doing was crazy, but but he did it for a stretch of games, like maybe 3+ weeks. And then you have to start answering, well, now that the playoffs are starting, which guy's going to show up? And so, you know, that's kind of played itself out over the course of the playoffs. But that's definitely one way that I've kind of looked at the whole dynamic with Kevin Durant and Curry and the whole team. I mean, Durant, you got to give him the ball at times, because that's what he does well. I mean, he scores.
Right. So you mentioned earlier that you thought that they're going to need him, obviously, to get to the title. So how does this look when he comes back? You know, I wonder what's going through his head, sitting there watching these last 4 games, and how it's all going to mesh anew when he comes back. Do you have any feel for that?
I think that's a great question. I don't think anybody knows the answer. And you know, the one thing about working out here in media is there's a sense out here that, you know, this is probably coming to an end. And so there's been a real pushback about, why do we have to talk about, you know, the off season and what's going to happen when, you know, they focus on the now, focus on you know, the now. And so there hasn't been a lot of talk about what kind of happens after this, or that. Now that's the off season. Right. Okay, so let's say, and what I'm getting at is legacies are on the line here.
Right.
And listen, I think Steph Curry's phenomenal. He's, you know, I'm sick and tired of using the word the best player ever, or the best this or best that, but like, he's one of the most impactful players I've ever seen on the game. You know, is Michael Jordan a better player? Yes, Michael Jordan's a better player than Curry, but I don't know that anybody's impacted the game, at least on offense, like Curry. I mean, but nevertheless, so let's say the Warriors, let's say Durant does not return. Okay, then let's say they win it. Well, at that point, you know, they're all hands off Steph Curry.
Right.
Because Steph Curry won it before Durant got there. He won it when Durant was there. And then when the chips were down, he led them 2 series to their 3rd straight title when Durant wasn't there. So all of a sudden, you know, the people that want to come down Curry's road have no more ammunition.
Right. True.
Okay. So then let's say the Warriors get down 2-0 in the finals, and now Durant comes back. And they win it. They come back and win it, because they're not going to have home court this year.
Right.
Well, at that point, if you really, really want to be a Steph Curry hater, or a guy who just wants to say he's overrated, you'll be able to say it if that's the way this ends up. I mean, you say, and it's an easy argument. Hey, the first title the Warriors won was a fluke. Everybody was hurt. Second year, he's 3-1. They're up. It's the biggest collapse in NBA Finals history. Then here comes Kevin Durant to save the day for him, and Durant wins Steph Curry 2. Durant's on the way to winning him 3, but Durant gets hurt. Curry can't carry the load. I mean, and that's the kind of, you know, not to get bigger, but I mean, you could paint it any way you want. And so I don't know what's going to happen when Durant comes back. On a practical level, you know, he's such a introspective guy. I know damn well he sees that they've gone 4-0 without him, and how they're doing it. And I mean, how do you come back now and say, I want to shoot 25 times.
Yeah.
Even if you're Kevin Durant.
Yeah,
it's going to be interesting. I think basically Durant will try to if he comes back, he'll try to come back and kind of ease back into it. However, and whatever that means, but I guarantee you, if the Warriors have nowhere to go with 3 minutes to go, Kevin Durant's you gotta go to him, because you want your best player to have the ball for the big shot in the last couple minutes of a game, and when you give it to Durant, you can guarantee that he's going to get it.
The other thing that could be a piece of this is if they win it, whatever role he plays in the finals, and then he moves on, they could be a defending NBA champion that feels like they've got something to prove. They feel like they got a chip on their shoulder almost, right? I mean,
yeah, that's a good point. I didn't really even think of that, because from my perspective, the way I'm kind of looking at this, and some people out here aren't crazy about it, but the Warriors are either going to win it this year or they're not. It's over. Now, how far they'll fall, I don't know. But Durant's going to leave. And that means, hey, now you got to re-sign Klay Thompson. So you re-sign Klay Thompson. Cousins at this point, I mean, I don't think it's a huge deal one way or the other, whether he comes back or not.
Yeah.
Iguodala is going to come back. He doesn't even play much in the regular season, really. And if you look at their bench, I know it's been okay for the last couple games, but they need 5 legitimate NBA players on the team. So, I think they'll be one of maybe 6 or 8 of the best teams, but I would not say that without Kevin Durant. Now, they might be able to win 2 series and win the NBA title this year without Durant. I can't see them winning it without Durant if he doesn't play the whole season. If he's not on the team.
Yeah, Las Vegas, Matt, seems to think that assuming a Milwaukee Warriors final seems to give Milwaukee a pretty good chance from what I'm hearing and reading. And they have been, day in, day out from day one of the season, they've been the best team in the NBA.
Right, exactly.
Do you feel like if the Warriors are the Warriors, they'll win the series? Are you pretty confident about that?
No. I think Milwaukee Bucks were the exact same team, but last year they were the Cleveland Cavaliers and they were playing in their second NBA finals.
Yeah.
Or maybe then I would say they're the favorite. But there's just that one thing that, you got to, how can you discount it'll be the Warriors' 5th straight time to the finals and Milwaukee's first time to the finals. And I know Giannis is an incredible player, but, you look at a game like last night and, he may have – it's not outside the realm of possibility he may have a couple of those games in an NBA final.
Yeah.
Everybody, all the greats do.
Mm-hmm.
So, but by the same token, they can, when they're good, they're really buttoned up and they're long, and that's what gives the Warriors a little bit of trouble length, because they're shooters.
Right.
And so if the Bucks, I do give the Bucks an absolute chance against the Warriors, and I think if Durant's not going to play at all, I think the favorites. I really do. Mm-hmm. And you're right about the fact that they've been the best team all year in both conferences. Mm-hmm. So if they just continue to basically do what they're doing without some kind of quirky meltdown or just the lights are too bright, they should have every right to be the favorites, even if Durant comes back almost. Now, they probably won't be, but, they're going to have home court. I definitely give them a shot at it. But you know what? Hell, it might be Toronto. You never know how it's going to go.
That's true.
And Toronto beat the Warriors twice this year, once with Kawhi and once without. So the Warriors are going to have, I think it's going to be the toughest series the Warriors have played of the 4 they're going to end up playing. I think whoever the Warriors play in the finals, soon they get there, is going to be tougher than Houston.
Yeah.
I can see both sides of the Milwaukee argument. On one hand, like you said, they have a great player in Giannis, and they have a lot of depth. They go like 9 deep.
Yeah.
But then I watched them play last night, and there's the Eric Bledsoe Achilles heel. You never know what you're going to get out of him. And I can also picture a lot of those switches where Brook Lopez winds up guarding Curry, and we know how that's going to turn out.
Right.
those two things are kind of loomed as Achilles' heels if it comes to that.
Yeah, and the other thing is when it comes to Giannis, the Warriors have two guys who they can put on him, and they're really, really good. One's Draymond Green and one's Iguodala.
Right.
And I get it. Giannis is 6'11" and Iguodala is 6'7", but I guarantee you he'll guard him at certain points, and so will Draymond Green. And I think you'll get a sense early in the series, kind of the tone gets set, because I think Giannis is. When they defend, they make you figure it out. Otherwise, they're just going to kind of demoralize you. So if they think that they can make, turn Giannis into a James Harden who goes 9 for 25, that's going to happen, and then the Bucks are in big trouble. The problem is like, in the Houston series, basically games 3, 4, and a lot of 5, James Harden looked like he was controlling Warriors defense. Yeah. They didn't really have anybody who was really stopping it with any success.
Right.
And then it all changed. So it's good stuff. And the bottom line is he has years to figure it out.
Yeah.
So asking him to do it his first try against this team, that's asking a lot.
So hat tip to Ron Adams, the assistant coach, for he's the one who always devises all their defensive schemes, and obviously he's had a real good one against Damian Lillard. But I wanted to ask you too about this. I know you tweeted in response to when Draymond told The Athletic last week that he considers himself the best defender ever, and I if I recall your tweet, you said I never saw Bill Russell, but you put Scottie Pippen high on that list, if I recall. So what's your extended beyond 280 characters view on Draymond's statement?
Well. So I never saw Russell. Pippen to me just swallowed up guys 6'6" and smaller. Rodman was terrific. I thought, obviously Jordan. Yeah. But Draymond Green, and then you got the centers. Olajuwon was a damn good defender. Duncan and Robinson were really good. But again, I shouldn't have used the word best. Yeah. Because who knows who the best defender is? It's Russell from everything I've heard. But but I don't know that I've ever seen a more impactful defender than Draymond Green. And if you watch him every single game, there are so many plays that he is involved in. Yeah. Every time the ball, a guy will drive to the basket in traffic and he'll lose the ball. Watch a replay. I guarantee you Draymond Green knocked the ball loose or fouled him. I mean, to me, he's the best mix of an on-ball defender with also being a great help defender. Like he's the best combination of that I've ever seen. Yeah. Usually guys are one or the other.
Right. That's a good point. They usually are.
Like
that's right.
Guy. Yeah. He can do both. You can put him on Blake Griffin all game long, and he'll do a great job against Blake Griffin. And you know what? He'll also help you out the whole game like a real help defender would. So, he does so much. It's like, okay, here's one thing. I thought coming to the Portland series, I'm like, we need to find out if Cantor can play against the Warriors because, he's got some skill offensively. I know they're gonna treat him bad in the pick and roll, blah, blah. Cantor can't function against Draymond Green. Yeah. He can't function like a 16-10 player. Right. And it's just amazing at that level, on the Western Conference Finals level. Like, Cantor cannot score on Draymond Green consistently. He'll never be able to do it. And I don't think he'll ever be able to, have a good stretch of a quarter against Draymond Green. So, that's the way I see him. He can't play Cantor against him in this series. So I just think he can impact you in a lot of. I just think he's a great defender.
Yeah, that's the thing that amazes me about him is, and you just said it really is, his ability to, in addition to everything else, is to guard the other team's big. Even if the big is a pretty good player, because if they didn't have that the last few years on this run they've been on, Think if they didn't have somebody who could do that. I mean, yeah, that's what's really sets him apart, I think.
Yeah, I'm not saying he's all the way like this guy, but he does have similarities to Barkley.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's like, you remember real early in Barkley's career, not that he was a great defensive player, but he could get up to block a shot.
Yeah.
Had good timing. He was explosive.
Mm-hmm.
Draymond Green is not quite that explosive, but he's bigger than Barkley in terms of height, and Draymond's got a real long wingspan.
Mm-hmm.
And so like he's just able to, he's got better timing than everybody else. His hands are better than everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
When everybody else is going up for the rebound, he's already thinking, well, I'm going to get it, and then what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And we saw
That's
that just in that one play last game when he got the rebound and shoveled it to Jordan Bell.
Mm-hmm.
Underneath.
Yeah.
I mean, he's really, really good, and he's really, really smart. And now he's not even getting pissed off at the officials. So,
I thought I was very impressed that he actually said, "Hey, I gotta shut up and play." And he was watching himself on film and was kind of embarrassed and how much he was bitching at the refs, and seems like he has some self-awareness and learned from it a little bit.
I thought it was incredible, and we had Tom Izzo on our show, Draymond's coach at Michigan State.
Sure.
And for Izzo, we undressed the kid coming off the court. Some people thought he did it. It went too far in the NCAA tournament. And, in the post-game interview, Izzo said what he said, and I just thought, you know what? These guys, he'll never give in. Yeah, he just will not give in. Not in this form. He's not going to say, maybe I shouldn't have. And even if deep down he thinks it, he will not say it in that form. It's just he's got too much pride. Draymond's the same way. But you give Draymond a day or two, and he'll come back and he'll not talk about stuff. It's pretty interesting. And if I'm Draymond Green, I don't even want to acknowledge. I would say, no, I haven't. My behavior's not changed to the rules. It hasn't. Now, I don't know why I'd want to say that. Hey, Steinmetz or Draymond, it looks like you're being nice to the refs now. No, not really. No different than before. I mean, that's what you want to answer.
Right.
I don't know why, but that's what you would. But for him, yeah, I was a jerk. I'm like, God, where'd that come from?
Mm-hmm.
So I agree. It was. I thought it was very interesting.
Couple of things that I'm curious about, sort of about covering the team and the team's place in the community out there, Matt. No, number one, they have. I mean, Steve Kerr is almost like a Yoda-like figure. He's the greatest interview in the world. But how are they like generally to deal with as a media person? Because they've been through it so much now. What are they like? What's it like covering that team?
Well, I'm somewhat, I wouldn't say removed, but I don't go into the locker room anymore.
Right.
Those days are done for me. I kind of don't like it. It's not, it's not. I'm getting up there. These are young kids, but anyway, they're incredible. I mean, Steph Curry really is one of the best human beings I've ever been around in sports. I mean, he really is. When he leaves here, it's over. There's never going to be another Steph Curry. There just never will be.
Mm-hmm.
There's never going to be another Montana out here. I mean, I understand when this guy was drafted, this team wasn't even. I mean, we believe they were on the periphery of the NBA. Nobody even knew where Golden State was really, and this fan base has been really loyal since the 75 championship. And, he followed through on everything. He, after his second or third year, he tweeted out, we're going to get this right. Don't worry about it. I'm sitting there thinking, what do you know? You know what I mean? Who the hell are you to say you're going to get it right? This team hasn't gotten it right in 20 years, but he did. And he not only got it right, but he turned the franchise into the into the Celtics of the 80s, into the best version of the Sixers in the 80s, into Showtime Lakers and Jordan's Bulls. I mean, that's what he's turned it into. So, I mean, he will never be rivaled out here. And that's actually one of the interesting dynamics that involves Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
I mean, Kevin Durant, it will never be his team. He will never be Steph Curry. It just, it's impossible. It's a task. It's a fool's errand. Mm-hmm. And so I think one of the things going on with Durant, to get a little sidetracked, is, he realized, I don't know if I'm ever going to really be fully appreciated here. Yeah. And not only that, maybe I won't get credit for winning 3 in a row because I had to be with this guy who everybody loves. Mm-hmm. So it's funny when people say, gosh, I can't understand why Durant would want to leave Golden State. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking, I don't know why he'd want to stay. To tell you the truth. I mean,
wow.
I think he needs to be a little more challenged basketball wise. That's kind of what that feels like to me. But right. Draymond Green is somebody who, he's like Barkley, kind of, as Curry's the everything, but there's the Oakland community loves Draymond Green. Put it that way, And Klay Thompson. He's quirky. He's a little strange. He's everything like every definition of like the California dude, So everybody loves Klay, because he's so down to earth and all that stuff. So these guys they've run the Bay out here for a while. They can, like Andre Iguodala's, probably. Yeah. I know he had better years in Philly, but I mean, he's hugely popular out here.
And not without reason. I mean, he's it's kind of the perfect role. I mean, he was kind of miscast in Philly as a star, whereas he's the perfect glue guy, the perfect complementary guy,
Yeah, it's funny. I don't, we always, sometimes you run out of arguments out here and you say, well, the Warriors have won it the last 2 years without Durant. I mean, I don't think so, but some people do. Mm-hmm. I maintain they don't win any titles without Iguodala.
Yeah.
And I mean that. I don't think they win the first title without Iguodala. And, I mean, he is such a stabilizing force for this team, and he's so smart. Mm-hmm. And I almost think I don't know what kind of defense he played when he was the best offensive player on a team, but man, he's really, really good defensively.
Yeah,
really
tremendous.
Good. And so you have him, and you have Draymond Green defensively, and that's really kind of how it all starts.
Matt, how do you think the culture changes, the fan base changes when they move into the new building?
Yeah, I think that's going to be an issue. I think it's. I live in Oakland. It's really bittersweet for me.
Yeah.
But they are just moving across the bridge, and the team's been they've been in the city before. That said, they're going to lose a lot. They're going to lose a lot of they've already lost a lot of diversity with the fan base because, look, the last 5 years, ticket prices have just soared out here. Mm-hmm. And especially now that they're going into the new arena next year, they've priced out a lot of average fans, or let's say middle-income fans for sure. And so the atmosphere's, a lot of people will tell you it's gone now, but it's certainly on a decline. Nobody thinks they're going to be able to recreate the atmosphere from Oakland in the new building. I mean, the prices are just absolutely insane in terms of season ticket money. And, going forward, I think this team and franchise are going to be challenged in ways they haven't even considered. And it's, they're going into a new building with one of the most fickle fan bases going. And, Steph Curry and these guys they're not getting any younger. And there's an assumption out here that it'll just keep going somehow. And, I've been around a while. Nothing keeps going forever. And it's already going on for 5 years in a row, which is longer than just about any other team's ever done this. So, what I think of at times is, geez, what if they take a 30-52 team into San Francisco? Or, in 3 years, that's what the team is. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like nobody can even contemplate that right now. Right. And I get it, but there is a sense of, like, let Durant go. That's fine. Somebody else will come. I'm like, for the mid-level exception? I mean, yeah, David West was a great signing, and they got Cousins, but this is Kevin Durant we're talking about. So we'll see what happens.
Which leads me. I know I know you have another engagement, your pregame show. But what do you think the team does look like next year? I mean, I think you said earlier that Durant is gone probably, but obviously they'll retain Klay Thompson at all costs, as they should. So right. What does the team look like next year, do you think?
Well, I think Durant's gone. Mm-hmm. And I think they re-signed Klay. Mm-hmm. And then DeMarcus Cousins is a free agent.
Right.
But the Warriors can only offer him,
like 600.
They can only offer him 6'2".
Yeah, somewhere
6.2 next year. Now, I don't know. Is that enough? Would he want to come back one more year at 6'2", or can he go? See, I think somebody will give DeMarcus Cousins, I don't know, 2 years, $20 million, or 2 years, 25. I mean, in this day and age, he actually, this injury has nothing to do with the Achilles. He looked pretty good after the Achilles. I just don't think he'd ever, again, they brought Cousins in here. That's a 25-point per game scorer. But everybody was like, oh, this is going to be great. And I'm like, you realize that a team can't have 4 guys average 30 points a game.
It would be kind of unprecedented, I think.
He proved he could play. So I don't think Cousins is going to come back. Livingston's talking about retirement.
It's probably time.
All they have is the mid-level exception. And they don't, I'm thinking about Iguodala on the last year of his deal. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know. I'd almost tell Iguodala, look, don't show up till Valentine's Day.
Mid-30s now. Yeah.
I mean, that guy's incredible. That guy can push the button whenever he wants.
I'm really impressed by him. I'm kind of happy for him because he caught a lot of flack in Philly for not being like, a top-of-the-line superstar. So I'm kind of happy for how it's played out for him.
I could totally see that. I could totally see that, he's definitely not a number one. And when he was at his best, he never was. But, I could also see how Philly – I could see how maybe they didn't know what to make of him, particularly early in his career. He's a different guy, for sure.
Yeah.
And so I'll bet it was probably interesting early in his career when he might have been feeling some pressure, but he wasn't as established as he is now. Like he's going through a lot in his career, no doubt.
Yeah. So,
hey Matt, next time we tear into the Centennial.
Absolutely. Hey, we got to get the diplomats back.
I think
we got to get him to 1,000.
Just a matter of time. He'll get there. Hey, thanks very much, man. Really great stuff.
Appreciate it, Matt.
No problem, guys. Thanks for having me. And Gordie, keep in touch, man.
All right. Be well. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Okay, segment 2 of the Brig Show. Really want to thank Matt Steinmetz. He was great and a lot of good insight on the Warriors. Speaking of insight, he's coming to us from fabulous Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, golf vacation. E.T., it's the great Eric Thomas. E.T., how are you?
I don't know if I have fabulous insight, but I'll give you insight.
All right, that's what we're looking for.
We're going to break down the Packers draft pick by pick. That'll be good podcasting.
And also the Knicks. Any thoughts on the Knicks, big guy?
As long as they get Kemba Walker and Kevin Durant and somehow don't draft R.J. Barrett, I think I'll be able to make it through the summer, but that's all to be determined.
All right, okay.
Real quick. So there's two bike weeks that happened down here, and we came down here on the back end of the first one. The second one starts on Friday, right?
Right.
So the place that we're staying is in North Myrtle Beach. It's all the way up, like right on the ocean.
Yeah, sure.
And this morning we're walking out the elevator, going down to the garage to get the vehicle and everything like that. Guy has a nice custom-made Knicks bike parked right next to the pool that's at the compound. It was awesome.
You get a picture.
It was Van Gundy.
Yes, I sure did.
Boom. Nice.
I believe that was Jeff Van Gundy.
No, I didn't see him dragging by anybody's ankle, so I don't think it was Jeff Van Gundy.
Very good, very good. We really did want to talk about George Chaump on this show, ET. So we thought it'd be natural for you as a Central Dauphin guy. For the folks who don't know, George Chaump is one of the all-time great high school football coaches, and he passed away this weekend. And ET is the voice of Central Dauphin football, which is a program that is a local power around here, which really was brought to that level by George Chaump when he came here at a point in his career when he had been out of coaching for a little while, and will develop entirely and try to make you understand what this guy accomplished. But let's start with what George Chaump did for Central Dauphin.
Yeah, I mean, everything. You know, I've said this a million times in the last, he passed away Sunday morning. I've said this a million times the last 3 days, really the last 2 weeks, because he went in the hospital a week ago Thursday, and it just didn't look good at that point. The family tried to keep a lot of things private, and rightfully so. But, you know, it's been kind of a touch and go couple of weeks, and I had some people who worked at the hospital that he was at that were telling me it didn't look good. So, you know, you just kind of have to prepare yourself for it. And we sort of knew, I mean, at some point, you know, the man's been on dialysis for a couple of years, and he didn't look really well when he came back to Landis Field last fall. So you kind of know at some point that something's going to happen. But anyway, you know, I've said this a million times. Like, the level that the program's on right now with Glenn McNamee, I mean, the state championship that he won in 2011 goes to back-to-back district championships in 14 and 15, that crazy 7 overtime game with Cumberland Valley.
Right. The
level that he took the program to is nothing short of remarkable. I mean, he statistically, in terms of wins and all that, the best coach ever in school history. But there is no level to take it to the next if there's no George Chaump first. And I think that's the thing that people have to understand. I mean, he completely changed the attitude of a program that, quite frankly, before he got there, outside of 1996 and one good year in the early 90s when they beat Berwick, sucked. The program did nothing in the 80s, guys. I mean, there were years where they were 1-8-1, and they were lucky to be 1-8-1. So, I mean, the whole dynamic of it changed, and I don't think people quite grasped what he was going to bring to the table. And the situation that he walked into was pretty tricky. There was a lot of moving parts to this. So he ultimately gets hired after the 96 season when they fire Ron Davis. And they did fire Ron Davis. Nobody can argue that, position was eliminated, a lot of stuff. They fired him. Ron Davis got us to the playoffs in 96 for the first time ever. Lost a great game to Wilson in overtime, I think, 14-12, and went 8-3 that year. They removed Ron Davis because George had, in the interim there, kind of made some connections with people and said, I'm interested in coaching again. And listen, he's one of the 3 greatest coaches in Pennsylvania football history. I mean, I put him up there, obviously, with Curry and Mike Pettin and the other 2. But he made some comments about wanting to get back into it. Well, you don't say no to him at that point, and you realize the program's on the uptick, so of course you bring in the guy who can take it to that next level then. Well, at that time, the thing that a lot of people forget, there was a guy named Ford Chapman who just started teaching at Central Dauphin. And when they got rid of Ron Davis, right away, everybody thought Ford was going to take the job. He never had an interest in going after it.
Yeah, so, I remember that now. I forgot about that. I remember that now.
Never had an interest in pursuing it. I mean, remember he helped a little bit with McCaskey, with Scott Feldman there for a little bit. And it was kind of a shock because when Ron got fired, you know, my initial thought was, we're going to get 4. It's going to be awesome. Like, we're here we go. This is it right now. And no disrespect to 4 because he's one of my best friends in the coaching business. And I talk to him all the time. You don't pass up an opportunity to hire George Chaump at all, under any circumstance.
Let's go just to historical perspective a little bit here for people who may not know. Going back to the 60s, there was a phenomenal high school football league in central Pennsylvania. It was called the Central Penn League. And the dominant program in that league was John Harris, which was an inner city high school in Harrisburg, coached by George Chaump, who was an innovator, an offensive innovator way ahead of his time. Ended up going to Ohio State as the offensive coordinator under Woody Hayes, and is largely credited with talking Woody Hayes into opening the offense up a little bit, leading to Ohio State winning the national championship in, was it 71, I believe? With
68, I think.
Oh, okay. Way back.
Rex Kern,
with Rex Kern. Mm-hmm. And then he from there he went and was an assistant to John McKay with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They
The execution, I'm in favor of it.
I'm in favor of it. But this was when they started to win. He was there when they started to win.
Yeah,
and
he had
then,
Ricky Bell and those guys. That's
yeah,
great.
a number of college jobs. My alma mater, IUP. He was at Marshall, and then he was at the Naval Academy.
Correct.
And this is I'm kind of headed here with something here that was really interesting to me because I only talked to him a couple times, but when he went back to Central Dauphin, after it was kind of perceived that he had failed at Navy, I thought it was so interesting to watch him coach Central Dauphin because he almost coached them. He was like a basketball coach. It was like he's coaching the team by himself. He's got a clipboard. He's walking down the sideline, just talking to the kids on the field, and it was crazy. And I remember talking to him, and he said, this is. I kind of take control of everything. I'm the offensive coordinator. I'm the defensive coordinator. I'm everything because that's what screwed me up at Navy. I gave too much autonomy to my assistants.
That's very interesting.
And that's I think what went wrong for me at Navy, which is the one place where he really didn't. It really didn't take off the way everybody thought it was going to.
That's a whole different animal, though. That's certainly a different.
But let's talk about the human being a little bit because he was such a smart guy, such an innovative guy, but also kind of a grandfatherly, sweet guy. It seemed to me. E.T., tell us about the person.
Yeah, at least I'm going to probably get into some personal stories here with some of the players from that first team, just that a lot of people don't know. I mean, we had a kid who played quarterback who was on the freshman team and the sophomore team. In sophomore year, he unfortunately passed away. He drowned on the first day of trout season in the state of PA, and he probably would have developed into a tight end at some point, but I think he would have been the odds-on favorite to be the quarterback for the school, Justin Wallace. Well, so we really don't have a quarterback on this team in 97. And 96, we had Rich Hamilton. He graduated. He went to Rutgers. He played there for a couple of years, and I don't know what happened to him after that, but he didn't finish at Rutgers. But so we had no quarterback for the 97 football team. Ryan Ballistic, who his brother was a Division I baseball player, had a cup of coffee in the minors and majors there for a little bit.
Yeah. But
Ryan was a phenomenal baseball player, too. He and his brother Adam were the catalysts to the team that won the state championship in 96 over State College. Chaump, the first thing he does when he gets situated in his office was no bigger than a closet. I'm not even kidding. I mean, you could barely fit him and me in there when I would spend time with him during my senior year. But the first thing he does is he contacts Ryan Ballistic. If I remember the story right, he actually went and pulled him out of class and said, I need to meet with you real quick. And he said, he basically made him an offer he couldn't refuse. He said, you have to play, sorry guys, somebody's cranking some music here, but he basically said, you have to play quarterback for me. And he looked at Ryan and basically was like, we're going to win, and I need you to be the guy who's going to lead us that way. And Ryan was like, I'm ready to go. Let's do it. And he had not played football to that point. He gave up football. He just totally gave up football because he was tired of the way the program was. He focused on baseball. There was a thought that, we were never going to win and everything. Ryan was a hell of a quarterback when he was a younger kid, too. I mean, he's always had a great arm. So, I knew just seeing him in grade school and things that he could definitely play. But he goes and basically recruits Ryan within the school and says, you got to be our quarterback, that's it. And he buys into it. He really, really helped out another kid that we had on the team, Brett Cotter. Brett had some off-the-field issues. George got him straight. I mean, the man just, everything he was around, like you talk about the Navy thing and his lack of success there, so throw that out. But think about what he did in his career, guys. I mean, obviously John Harris, he built into a power. Jimmy Jones goes to USC out of that
really a national power. I mean, you
exactly.
You didn't think of it that way, but if they had USA Today rankings back then, they would have been in it.
Oh,
yeah,
by far. My dad played for McDevitt. He hated playing those John Harris teams. He could not stomach going against them. Then you look at what he does with Woody Hayes. Basically saves his job, delivers a national title to Ohio State. Without him, they don't win that thing. He brings Marshall back from the brink of the worst possible tragedy ever that's ever hit a college program in any sport with the plane crash. He's basically built them into a power that they take with them through the 90s with Leftwich and all those other guys, Pennington and Moss and everybody. And then he obviously goes to Navy, wins 14 games or whatever, and has his struggles there. And then he comes back to Central Dauphin. Now, granted, the program wins the year before, but it was never, ever thought that he was going to take it to that level. Then he goes back to Harrisburg, a team that desperately needed some life breathed into it, and he creates arguably, I mean, Mike, I think you saw him in 2007. How damn good that Harrisburg
Yeah,
team
I did.
is. One of the best high school football teams I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, they were unbelievable, and how they didn't win the state championship, I'll never understand that. But, I mean, these are the things that he does. Everything he did, it seems like from, when he goes to John Harris first and then works his way up to the college ranks, back to high school, everything he did, he basically had to reconstruct. And along the way, he built these relationships with people who, you get kind of tied up and like, oh, my God, it's George Chaump and he's this legend and everything like that. But I don't think you really understand. Like, he hit a nerve with these kids that they all bought into him. They bought into this old guy who people would look at on the surface and say, oh, he's out of touch. He's not going to be able to coach modern football. He burned every record book at a high school that he ever coached because they reset the damn thing 16 times.
And one of the things that is so interesting about this is you never coaches to such a large extent. You have to judge them in context. And our boy Dave Jones wrote a terrific piece about George today, in which he said that when he was on the staff at Ohio State when Woody Hayes punched that dude from Clemson and ended up getting fired, and he should have been the head coach of Ohio State then, but because of some political stuff, he ended up not getting that job. When he went to Tampa Bay, the way things are today, he might have been the hot coordinator. He might have been the big, you know what I mean? And who knows where he would have ended up if he'd have got in either of those, points in his career. This might be one of the great football coaches of all time. We don't know that because of context, but we do know what he did in terms of building programs, which is what you're talking about.
Dave had a really good anecdote in there where he quoted Fort Chapman talking about when George was at a coach's clinic.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Tressel was the featured speaker, and he was delayed in speaking because you look over the corner and there's Tressel listening to every word that George is saying. Mm-hmm. There was a similar situation in 2011 at the state football finals. The Friday night of the finals, this is back obviously when we had 4 classifications, but the Friday night of the finals, the 3A game, the McDevitt-Archbishop Wood game, where Wood just plastered McDevitt. Yeah. But Ohio State's recruiting Noah Spence at that point, and it's a big deal because Urban Meyer's in town. And he's walking the sidelines at Hershey Park Stadium and everything. George is doing a guest chat. He's the expert in the chat that Andy Shea was doing on PennLive.com. Mm-hmm. And before the game starts, there's just this kind of like Hollywood-esque buzz. I mean, there's Tom Bradley there, Luke Fickles with Urban Meyer. All these coaches are here to watch, Spence and the kids on Wood and everything like that. And they're in the corner of the press box, right when you walk into the first door, when you walk into the Hershey Park Stadium press box. There is Urban Meyer, who is, at this point, the hottest thing in college football. He's building Ohio State up, the Saban killer, the only guy who can beat Saban until Dabo comes along. And he's standing there listening to every single word that George Chaump is saying. And I walked up to Meyer, and I was talking to Tom Bradley, of course, and I walked up to Meyer just to shake his hand and say, hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you, blah, 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 whatever. And I started talking to Chaump, and then I turned and Chaump actually introduces me to Urban Meyer, and Urban says to me, why don't you tell me you knew him? And I'm thinking, like, my God, this is like the hottest college football coach in America. And he's standing there listening to this 70-year-old guy, 80-year-old guy, whatever, just hanging on every word. I mean, he knew so many people. He had the ear of so many people. They respected him. They studied him. I mean, just everything up and down. Now, obviously, Meyer's got the Ohio State connection, and so does Chaump. But, just to see that, and I mean, I knew at that point, because I had known him since 97 at that point, so we're talking years later, but I had known at that point, how much respect I had for him and how much the local coaches loved him and everything. And, some of the administrators sort of didn't like him and forced him out of jobs here and there, whatever. But the just to see that guy, that level of coach, stand there and hang on every word that this man was saying, it was like, my God, that's like, I don't know what other high school coach Urban Meyer would have done that with. I mean, it's hard to say.
Let's also throw in there, and we're going to promote Dave here a little bit to urge everybody to read this story. There's an anecdote in there where Urban Meyer is talking a hooker out of being a hooker. So make sure you check that out. Dave Jones, Harrisburg Patriot News, PennLive.com.
I talk him into keeping the jobs down here.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
But there was also an anecdote. It was a very tender one toward the end of that story where he talked about a kid who came out for football who had basically no business being on the team, and all of George's assistants are urging him to cut this kid, and George just wouldn't do it. And eventually the kid developed into a track star. I don't know if you were familiar with that or you knew that kid or anything like that, but I thought that was a pretty tender story.
We had a similar situation at Central Dauphin in '99 where it was supposed to be a rebuild. I graduated in '98, but the '99 team was really good. They actually went undefeated during the regular season and lost to Cumberland Valley in the district championship game. But the midway point of the season, this is probably my favorite story of him, other than like the little personal ones that I have, like talking to him and stuff. But my favorite story with him is, so Cumberland Valley is just hammering them in the first half. I mean, they're running the ball all over him and everything. He takes this kid named Brandon Manning, who went to Virginia Tech. He takes Brandon Manning, who had never, ever in his career run a sweep on the football field. He was not a running back. He takes Tim Remfield's playbook and inserts Brandon Manning in this position. And in the second half, they ran for almost 300 yards and absolutely ran Cumberland Valley over to win the game. They came back and won the game. I think they were down, I want to say it was 28-7 at some point in the third quarter, and he just starts running the ball, literally running Cumberland Valley's offense with a kid who had never took a handoff in his life, and they come back and they win the game. That was him. Like that was him. It's like that innovation. You don't see that kind of innovation, with a guy that you look at and just go, my God, he's 70-some years old. He's doing this. It just doesn't seem like it's, usually you have to have like the hotshot offensive coordinator that would do that. No, George just said, Manny, run the ball. I was standing on the sidelines for that game, actually. A bunch of us, I think it was the homecoming game, and a bunch of us who graduated the year before went back. And my radio career started with a gentleman that we all know named Jed Donahue. And we used to have a gentleman who helped us out with some of our Baltimore coverage named Bob Bartell. Well, Bob's son played for Chaump at IUP.
Right.
And the week of that game, Bob is like just hammering me every day. Can you get us in the game? Can you get us in the game? Can you get us in the game? I'm like, Bob, listen, I'll do what I can. I can't promise anything, but I'll do what I can. Game sold out. This is before Landis actually had their home press box on the they had just moved the home press box, I think, to the side that it's on now. But the place is sold out. You can't park anywhere. You have to get to the game at like 3 o'clock because the lots are filled up and everything like that. Bob called me from outside the stadium. He was like, hey, we're outside. Can you come get us? And I walked out to the front, and I said, can you let these two guys in? And the person working the gate's like, who are you? Like, no, we can't do that. I'm like, well, they're guests of Coach Chaump. Like, you got to let them in. And they looked at me and they said, oh, they're guests of Coach Chaump. George is like just about to come out in the field. Like they're coming up from the locker room and they're just about to come out in the field. He sees them and he goes over and talks to them. And the person working the gate goes, Coach, do you know these two gentlemen? And George goes, yeah, they're with me. And that's it. He just former players all the time wanting to come back and hang out with him. I mean, we had a couple of things to honor his teams at Central Dauphin the last few years. The 99 team, I think, is going to get honored again this year, midway through the season. But 2002 they honored, 99 they've already honored, 97 came back, 98 came back. And every time they come back, the players they flock to him. I mean, they couldn't wait to be around him and talk to him, because some of these guys move away. They lose touch. George wasn't going to sit there and text you all the time and stuff like some of these coaches do now. But just to see the love and the respect that these guys had for him. I talked to a couple of my classmates. One of them lives down in Jersey. I had to let him know, and of course he's like, I got to get up there. I got to see him. He just saw him a couple of years ago, but whenever they do something for him, I mean, there's just going to be players after players after players. The man touched so many lives, did so many things for these programs, and I mean, we certainly at Central Dauphin, I know Harrisburg feels the same way. Even CD East feels the same way. When he was the head coach at CD East, this is another one of my favorite stories. When he was the head coach at CD East in 2012, Central Dauphin's the defending state champs. And week 10 rivalry game, Chase Edmonds just goes nuts, and the CD tries to come back late. There was a turnover late in the game. I think an incomplete pass late in the game. And East upsets them for like the first time in 27 years or something like that. Some crazy amount of years. And George and his staff end up going to Gilligan's after the game. And I usually go out with the CD coaches on Friday night, get a little dinner, sit around, talk about the game, maybe watch a little film or watch like a late college game or something. And I said to him, I'm going to go to Gilligan's tonight and hang out with him for a little bit because I haven't had much of a chance to talk to him in recent years. So Gilligan's on Route 22, they have like this back room where it's sort of like this nicer, setup where you take like your family or kind of get away from the bar area and things like that. He's sitting back there at a table. He's got a little drink next to him, and he's flanked by two of his assistant coaches. And I walked in, I'm talking to the assistant coaches. I looked over at him, and I said, how the hell did you do that tonight? You weren't supposed to win that game tonight. How the hell did you do that? All he does is he puts his hand around the glass. He's about to take a sip of the drink, and he always sat in his older age, like kind of like slunched over a little bit, and he just kind of like looked up and he raised his eyebrow and he winked at me, and that was it. I mean, he was a special man. I mean, none of us should ever forget him. None of us should ever forget what he did for us. Every program that he was a part of, just what he was able to do for the players and the positions that he put them in to win, and where he took these programs. I mean, the program, I feel confident speaking for Coach Mack at CD right now. I mean, I know he and George kind of butted heads when Mack was a young assistant on the staff and everything, but, again, the level that the program is at now, there would not have been a next level to get to if George didn't put that level in there first.
E.T., we want you to hit him straight.
I did that today, actually. I was hammering it off the T-ball.
Boom. Boom. I don't like that Brooks Koepka.
So I was going to say, we're not going to have a continuation of that argument, are we? That Twitter argument that you guys had the other day?
Listen, here's my stance on that. Like, Mike and I kind of talked a little bit off air, but listen, nobody's Tiger. To be upfront, Jack, I still think he's the greatest golfer of all time. I mean, I caught him late in his career, obviously, but Jack's one of my favorite athletes of ever.
Yeah, me too.
I still think he's better than Tiger. Like, I still think Jack's the number one, until Tiger maybe catches him.
Well, I think it's career value against peak value. I think Jack is going to have the greatest career in the history of golf. But again, I'm going back to peak Tiger. There was never been anything like peak Tiger.
Nothing anything like it. My only point with that was, like, we haven't seen anything remotely close to peak Tiger. I mean, Rory had a sniff of it for a little bit. Koepka's the closest thing to it. I mean,
so you're agreeing with me. We haven't seen anything close to peak Tiger.
No, there hasn't. I think I kind of got lost in translation. There hasn't been anything close to it.
Oh boy, here we go.
No, he's on the money here.
He's the defending champ twice in two majors, and I don't see any reason why he's not going to win the U.S. Open again. I mean, I know he played like crap yesterday, Sunday in the final round, but I don't see any reason why he doesn't win the U.S. Open a third time.
Pebble Beach is a little more small ball than he's thrived in the past, but we'll see. But anyway, I mean, I'm not down on Koepka, and I'm not really a fan of Tiger. I just think peak Tiger is something like we've never seen before.
Apparently down on his girlfriend, though.
Yeah, I guess he is. Very strange. Isn't that strange?
That was really crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've noticed that before, too. He's a little bit cold with her, and I can't believe we're talking about how a guy treats his girlfriend on this show.
Listen, I walked around North Myrtle Beach yesterday. I was a shirt from a certain website that took a screen cap of when Tiger won the PGA Championship last year.
Boy.
Kept his girlfriend standing outside the clubhouse, and Tiger just kind of like walks by and he's like turned and looking at her. Of course, I wore that around here yesterday. Of course, why would I not wear the greatest T-shirt of all time when I'm on a golf trip?
Because you're diplomatic and you're a beloved figure.
I don't know if I'd go that far. I really don't know if I'd go that far. Diplomatic, yes. Beloved, I don't know about that.
E.T., we're going to do this again because I know that we will have plenty of fodder going forward. And we really appreciate you spending some time.
In fact, the next time you're on, we're all going to do our Joe impression, the entire broadcast.
Boom.
Ben Schwartz and water. I don't want to go down there.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
We love you.
Appreciate it, guys.
All right, see ya.
Take care.
The great Eric Thomas, and he'll be on again because we have a lot of places to go with ET.
Oh, for sure.
What's on your mind, big guy? Plug away.
I have no plugging to do other than I'm doing the Sixers rehash and who's going to sign and who's not going to sign, and I wish I had a good feel for that, but I had forgotten this until I looked at it yesterday that as of July 1st, they will only have 5 guys under contract.
Right. Yes. I did see that somewhere.
That's significant, obviously. I mean, because they're going to basically have to reshape their team, which is
are.
kind of an extreme rebuild for a team that had a pretty successful
And
year.
they have some money to spend. I mean, they're going to be able to do it, but that doesn't mean you're going to figure it out or get it right or even get it the way you want it.
Right, and it's like you would think on one hand they're almost obligated to re-sign Tobias Harris and Jimmy Butler just because they gave up so much to get them.
Yeah, right.
But on the other hand, if you're going to give Jimmy Butler 5 years when he turns 30 in September, that's a risky proposition.
And on the other hand, they might have to keep him. I think they very well, we'll see.
I mean, there's talk that he might end up with Brooklyn or the Knicks or the Clippers or, there's all kinds of speculation.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how he's perceived league-wide. I'm not sure if he's... It's interesting.
I think he's probably like a second or third wheel. I think that's probably how he's perceived on a really good team. Don't you think?
It's one of those things... Well, he could be a second, I think. Yeah, I think that's about right. Yeah, that's probably right. On a team that has a real chance to win.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly right.
All right. Hey, this was a pretty good show. We covered a lot.
We covered a lot of ground.
A lot of podcasting. We podcasted our asses off today.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
We will do it again next week, gang. The addresses, if you want to hang. It's at BuzzerAfter on Twitter. It's Gmail is afterbuzzer@gmail.com. And at Facebook, After the Buzzer. And if you want to just listen to the show, go to YouTube and just search for After the Buzzer. We will be there, and we will be there again next week. So thanks for hanging. I'm Mike. I'm not Gordie. I'm Mike. He's Gordie. See you later.